We know that a lot of animals migrate every year. They have to travel to wait out cold winters or to come back to the place they were born to get their own babies. Actually, it is rather difficult to find two different animal species migrating in the same way. Some species migrate across the oceans. Others can change their place only for several hundred feet. But most animals travel in groups, sometimes in very large groups. Today, we want to tell you about the most astonishing migrations among animals. So, get ready to be surprised! 10. Monarch butterflies. 4 generations during one flight. Monarch butterflies are one of the most beautiful butterflies in the world. These orange and black creatures can be seen flittering from flower to flower generally in the United States and southern Canada. But they live in other parts of the world too. And their migration cycle impresses scientists greatly. The point is that these gorgeous insects change 4 generations during their annual migration cycle. Every spring, adult monarch butterflies go from their winter place of living in the north to the southern forests of Mexico and California. They go back in the fall, covering some 2,000 to 3,000 miles each way. The most exciting thing is that the monarch butterfly continues to feed, fly, and reproduce during their traveling throughout the US and southern Canada. And only the 4th generation of these butterflies actually comes to Mexico in fall. Human migrations haven't followed the coming back and forth cycle as animals do. Prehistoric people left their homes in the search of food and good weather conditions, but they didn't usually come back. Of course, our distant ancestors that had been going from southern to northern parts of the world changed many generations. And adapting to the new environment, their appearance changed too. In other words, those people who had left Africa 50,000 years ago differed greatly from those that came to Central Asia dozens of thousands years later. 9. Chinook salmon. Struggle against the stream. Chinooks are the largest salmon species, and that's why it is often called the king salmon. They can weigh as much as 120 pounds. But it is not the only special feature of these fish. Chinook salmon that live in the headwaters of the Yukon River near Whitehorse make the longest migration of any salmon in North America. They swim about 2,000 miles from the Bering Sea all the way across Alaska and the Yukon, and almost to the British Columbia border. The most interesting fact is that Chinooks swim upstream all this distance. After spending years swimming in the salt waters, salmon return to the fresh water they were born in to spawn and after that finish their life. Yes, they swim upstream against strong currents to make the strange end of their journey. 8. Straw-colored fruit bat. 1,000,000 on one tree. Straw-colored fruit bats live in huge colonies that can range from thousands to millions of individuals. These bats are extremely communicative with each other, and being together is very important to them. Between October and December each year, 10 million bats fly from the Congo to Zambia's Kasanka National Park. Their aim is to eat the park's generous supply of musuku fruit. Nobody knows why, but the bats choose to occupy only 1 acre of the 10,000-acre forest. Millions of bats, weighing up to 10 tons together, have a sleep in one tree.
Oh really? Crocodiles do.
As scientists say, it is the highest density mass of warm-blooded mammals on the planet and the highest density migration. 7. Adapting freshwater American eels. American eel has a very interesting life history strategy. These fish, like salmon, finish their life spawning, but they travel in the opposite direction. They live in fresh or brackish water during as an adult and then migrate into the ocean to spawn. So, after hatching in the salty Sargasso Sea, the eels swim to freshwater rivers in the United Kingdom and the east coast of North America. The most interesting fact is that during their journey, kidneys of fish adapt to the change in salinity. When it's time to lay eggs, the eels and their kidneys return to their normal state. Of course, the migration strategies of people wasn't like the ones that use animals. But the early stages of human evolution also had to adapt to the changing of the environment. Do you know that the earliest hominids didn't tend to migrate at all? Barefooted Australopithecus and Homo habilis had short legs and can't go to long distances. But when they went to a higher level of evolution, growing out long legs, they learned how to go far away. As you know, a bit later we inhabited all the planet thanks to these migrations. 6. An Arctic tern, the longest migration record breaker. Not long ago, scientists decided to measure the distance that Arctic tern tracks migrating. The researchers developed a device small enough to attach to the tiny tern and to follow the full migration cycle these birds do every year. They were shocked to discover that it recorded the bird traveling on average of 44,000 miles a year. The Arctic tern flies from Greenland and the Arctic to Antarctica. In other words, it travels from one end of the world to another. As the bird can live up to 30 years, it means that during its lifespan, one bird can cover about 1.5 million times. Just imagine! It is as if this little creature travels 3 times to the moon and back! It is a very good result for the bird that weighs about 3.5 ounces. Anyway, it is the longest migration in animal world. 5. Adelie penguins, the longest penguin migration. Adelie penguins are the penguins the most adapted to very low temperatures. No other penguin species and no other bird breeds have gone further south than Adelie penguins. But it is not the only special feature of these birds. Now scientists are sure that Adelie penguins conduct the longest penguin migration in the world. During one scientific research, the pair of Adelie penguins, with one put on a satellite tag, made their usual migration trip. This satellite tag tracked the bird's migration from its southern breeding grounds at Ross Island to the north in the winter and back again. These two penguins were recorded to cover the distance as long as 10,940 miles. Today, it is the record. Besides, data collected by the tag also showed that, while Adelies need light for navigation and fishing for food, they can do these things under extremely low light conditions. But on average, these birds' migration are about 8,000 miles. Adelie penguins follow the sun around the Antarctic, since the winter sun never entirely sets. 4. Dragonflies, the longest insect migration. These unbelievable creatures make astonishing journey, which is the first known insect migration across open ocean water. Every year, millions of dragonflies fly thousands of miles across the sea. They start from India and head to the Maldives, Seychelles, Mozambique, and Uganda, using the wind to help them along. How can they do that? Dragonflies use moving weather systems and monsoon rains to complete this awesome migration, then go back again. All in all, their round trip can be up to 11,000 miles long. Dragonflies need fresh water for breeding, so they use the advantage of temporary rainwater pools. In other words, the insects just follow the rains. First, they use monsoon rains of India, then short rains of East Africa, next the summer rains of Southern Africa, and the long rains of East Africa. And at last, they go back to India for the next monsoon. Just like the monarch, not one and the same dragonfly completes this incredible journey. They go through several generations for the complete migration cycle. 3. Wildebeest, 2 million traveling together. The Great Wildebeest Migration is considered to be the largest migration of any land mammals. Starting the journey in January and February, the wildebeests, or gnu, move from the Serengeti Plains west towards Lake Victoria. They gather in 2 million flocks and leave Tanzania. They head for Kenya, which is 500 miles away. It is a very risky and dangerous way, because not all the creatures come to the place they want to come. Crossing the crocodile-infested Mara River, or lions or hyenas attacks make their journey a real challenge. Gnus are continually on the move, along with thousands of zebra and gazelle in search of grass and water. They follow the cycles of rainfall to help guide them. 2. Humpback whales. The longest mammal migrations. Humpback whales are the mammals that have some of the longest migration distances. In summer, these gorgeous giants feed in colder waters up north. Then, in winter, humpback whales travel closer to the equator for mating and to give birth. Some of these astonishing beauties travel over 9,000 miles round trip during their migration. Their large, scooped tails help them to travel through the water quickly. Just imagine! Humpback whales can journey from Alaska to Hawaii in 36 days. Not all of them travel together. Pregnant whales and those who had calves in the previous year go north in groups first. 1. Red crab of Christmas Island. The most synchronized migration. At the beginning of the wet season, which takes place in October and November, red crabs that live on Christmas Island head out from the forest to the coast to breed. The males arrive at the sea first. The female, that are much bigger in number, come a bit later. This migration is a great adventure as the crabs have to deal with sun exposure and dehydration, to say nothing about cars on the roads and other obstacles. The crabs move synchronically, crossing the island together. There are so many of them that sometimes sections of roads have to be closed to allow us to get through. We have told you before about the special bridge that was made for protection of these creatures. To know more, watch the video, 10 Awesome Bridges for Animals. As tiny babies only 5 millimeters across, the red crabs travel back from the sea to the forest. Their trip takes about 9 days. Our migrations also take place regularly, and now they are not controlled by instincts. But, as animals, we also leave our places to find better conditions and resources. And as animals, we change continents and cross the oceans in the search of a better life for us and our children. Hope the video was informative and interesting for you. Let me know, what animal migration is the most impressive for you? See you soon!